Black fly. I probably have a lot of those movements.
All right. Can you please state your name and your age today?
My name is Jean Andrews Maxwell Harford, and I'm eating a black fly, and my age is 80, plus a few days, months, 3 months.
What's your birthday?
May 6, 1929.
And where are we at today, and why is it significant to you?
We're at the Gregg Lake beach, which is a new beach from when I grew up here. But it's significant that we be here because this is where I was raised every summer from the time I was about 3 until I was, maybe 14 and went to work for the summer in various places. But still came over whenever we could. And we brought our family up over here in vacation time, and we've, well, the history goes even back further than that, I suppose. My father grew up in Antrim, and he acquired the cottages where we're staying here at Gregg Lake many years ago from his Uncle Frank, whom he helped take care of until his last days. He was the brother of his mother. He was the brother of his mother. Doesn't sound right. Anyway, he acquired the property, therefore we've just always come. And I have many fond memories of learning to swim, picking blueberries, cranberries, watching the herons each year, the various kinds of fish, the frogs, which we used to have a lot of when I was young, and now we're lucky if we hear 1 or 2 that go croak croak. And I learned how to boat over here. By boat I mean a row, and we never had a canoe when I was young, just a boat. And then we had a canoe after we were married, and so my kids were brought up with a canoe. And I think many of the grandchildren had a lot of fun with that. As the canoe got older, we let them do with it as they pleased, and they certainly did. Many tip-overs and et cetera, et cetera. So this is probably our 4th get-together, wise. So this one being the 60th anniversary of our marriage. But we've had at least 4 over here with whomever could come. It used to be easier when they all lived in the East. Now it's a great cost that it's costing to come. It's sure been wonderful watching them have a wonderful time, seeing each other, greeting each other, and oh, you look so different. Oh, you've got children. Oh. It's been so good. Used to be a Boy Scout camp over there, and that was thrilling to me when I was less than 14. And now there's a Girl Scout camp, so we'll let the boys have their turn at being thrilled. Although we don't see them out as often as we did the boys. They were the boys were more sneaky. They'd get out with the big canoes and lower the bridges, etc.
So, let's start back in the beginning with, let's see, what are some stories you've heard about your either great-grandparents or grandparents?
Well, my great-grandparents built the farm in Henniker. Now, this is my mother's side. So that would be the Andrews. And my middle name is Andrews, so I was named after them. His name was Gilbert, and hers was Lizzie. And when I used to visit them down at the farm, we always stayed in a room just above the porch that had a tin roof, and I loved it when it rained. because it was so cozy. They all had feather beds, and in the winter my grandmother would heat up freestones, they called them. I really don't know if that's freestone or freestones, but anyway, they'd heat them up and put them in the bottom of the bed so your feet would stay warm. They were wrapped in a blanket or a newspaper, and sometimes they were moved a little bit and then you'd jump in. And so feather beds were another great thing. And my grandmother and grandfather took over the farm from her parents. Before they died, they worked with them. And then later on, my uncle, my mother's brother, took over from his parents, her parents, and lived there, and then they sold it. So it's been in different hands. Unfortunately, today it's no longer there. It was in what they call the flood zone, which I never saw it flood but once, and that didn't hit the house. But anyway, those laws take a lot of memories away. So that house that he built by hand. And then my grandparents on that side of the family, my grandmother Cooper, she married Leon Cooper, and her name was Grace. And they took in boarders all summer long from New York City. And so when I was old enough, probably 12 or 13, I would go down and help wait on the dining room table. There was only one dining room table. And help serve as my grandmother cooked in the kitchen. And then they had a brook down the back called Amy Brook. And had a big hole where you called the swimming hole. And it was mighty cold, and snakes as guests along the side. And it had a lot of suckers. Those are a fish that have a real big mouth, and they clean the bottom of the brook. And I haven't been down to that brook for so long, I have no clue if there's even a bridge that goes across it or not. But they owned acres of land out in the back where they had their cows. And I used to watch my cousins who lived there and were brought up on the farm bring in the cows, and I just thought they were so smart. And then I learned about a lead cow, which she's the smart one. And I probably have other memories that don't come to mind right this minute. Then on my dad's side, I know very little about his side, because when he was in about the 7th or 8th grade, his father left home in search of gold out in California, and never came back. He contacted the family every now and then, but that was about it. So my father did not care too much for that situation, because he and his older sister, my Aunt Myrtie, were left to help with the 2 other siblings that were at home and help the grandmother. But my father was very close to his mother, my Granny Maxwell. And she lived over here in Antrim. And one of her daughters had Parkinson's, very bad, so she lived with her for a long time. And then, of course, another daughter, Aunt Sarah, lived in Rhe-Anne. So my father had 3 sisters. And the third one being Aunt Susie, who had Parkinson's. And I can remember how badly she shook after her 4th child was born. So she needed all the help she could get.
And how did that shape your father? He became the man of the house then?
Oh yes, at a very early age, 14, probably 13 actually. He was very much a self-made man, even though he never went beyond the 8th grade. And he was into local politics, I suppose you might say. He always ran for town clerk, and he was town clerk almost all of my life. He never ran for selectman. He was never in that position, but he did serve the state of New Hampshire in the legislature about 3 or 4 different terms, I believe. And he gave advice to just about anybody in Henniker that wished to have it. He was not a learned judge, but he learned from books, and he was a very smart man. uh, quiet. I never once heard my father or my mother raise their voice at each other, which is more than my children can say about their mom and dad. But we get over our little loud tiffs very quickly. Never kept a grudge or anything like that. So for these 60 years, we're still speaking, still having tiffs, and neither one of us knows what we're going to do when the other one departs, which we know the years are getting down. So any other?
Yeah.
And then my mother was graduated from University of New Hampshire, and she was an English teacher, but she didn't really teach very long because she met my father.
And how and why was she determined or able to do that at a time that a lot of women didn't graduate from the university?
That's a good question. Probably because her parents were able to send her, for one thing, and they believed in education. And even though my father had never been educated like she had, they were very compatible, not competition-wise or anything. My mother was very active in the home as well as in the community and her church. She was belonged to the Methodist Church. My dad was what he called a home Baptist. Sundays, Easter and Christmas and whatever. So, and they were 11 years apart in age. We always expected my dad would go first, but my mom went when she was only 63. Very young cancer. And then he died, I assume, of a heart attack. Never really read the research in hand at the time he passed away. But we knew when we went, he was in a nursing home, that the doctor had said he probably had about 3 years. So that's what he had. The doctor was right.
If you could sum up your childhood in a few words, or one word, what comes to mind when you think of them?
I was very happy. Didn't know there was anything I didn't have. That's not one word, but
Yeah, no.
I can't say I'm a person of few words because no, I had a very happy childhood. Skating on the river, and nobody in Henniker skated on the river until my father said it was okay. He'd go out and test it because a river can be very dangerous because it has a current in the center, and we had whirlpool areas which we knew right where they were. But you talk with anybody that's my age, a little bit younger, a little bit older, and they will all say, oh yes, when Mr. Maxwell said we could go skating, we all got down there. And we had our little bonfires and cooked hot dogs. There were hot dogs in those days. I don't think there were marshmallows.
So when did you meet your husband, and that whole what drew you to him type of a thing?
Well, that's, let me start from the beginning of when I got out of high school. After I graduated from high school, I went to a place in Wellesley, Massachusetts called the Convalescent Home for Children. And I was going to train to be what you'd call a nanny today. And we had all the children that were in that hospital recuperating from many different things. The hips that weren't correct in the first place, and they had the hip not replacements, but they had to get them back into the socket. Little boy, I can remember, had real bad burns all over where he'd gone into lye, and he and I became very close. But I wasn't there very long. I was probably there less than 6 months. I got homesick. And I got homesick when I was put on the evening shift. And I just didn't sleep for like 36, 40 hours and whatnot. And I couldn't handle it. So I said, this is a good time to quit. I packed up my trunk, shipped it home, got my ticket and came. And then I told my parents I was on my way. I don't think they were very happy. But anyway, here I am. And what little I did learn in that hospital, I took to use with my own children So after that, then I worked in many places as a waitress in Hanover for New England College when they would come in, and for anybody else that came to the Hanover Inn. And Grandpa will probably tell you that's the first time he saw me, but I don't recall noticing him at that moment. There was too many others, and we girls who waited on table we almost hated to go out into the room with all those boys goggling, but we had no choice. That was our income. Later on, he came into my life, I guess you might say. I worked at Dr. Placid's office, by the way, at that time. I had moved jobs, and I worked for him for 2 years as a dental assistant. And Grandpa, Dad, whomever, my husband, Bob, had asked my sister to write him type up one of his theses or whatever you call it. I've not been to college myself, so I'm not familiar with all of those things. But he had to write a paper, and so she was hired by him to type up the paper. And so they had a date, and he fixed me up with his best friend, whom I couldn't stand. I sent him home early, and that was it. So then when my sister went away to work for the summer up in the White Mountains, and I was still working for Dr. Placid, that's when Bob decided to ask me for a date. Or I asked him. Don't ask me how it came about, because I couldn't tell you. And one day he was visiting me at the dentist office where it was very quiet, and that's when he proposed that we would get married. So we basically sort of ran off, you might say. Everybody knew that we were running off, but at the same time we had the wedding in Portsmouth at his area. And his mother came, and I think 9 of his buddies, and then his cousin that was married very close to Bob stood up with me. And my father never liked to drive at night, and Bob didn't get out of work until 8:30, so we were married about 9 o'clock at night in the St. John's Episcopal Rectory area. And that's where Bob had been raised and gone all of his life. So he gave us the normal introduction talk to marriage and etc. And we must have listened, because here we are. So was there anything else to that question that I missed?
No, that was great. That was great.
And I just wore a regular Sunday dress. We didn't spend any money, and I didn't want to ask my parents for a big wedding and so on, because I knew their situation in life. They were very frugal type people, but at the same time, I'm sure they would have given me what I asked for. So my wedding pictures don't look like much compared to some people's. And from there on, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And of course, as most everybody knows, our first child passed away when she was 9 months old. We didn't know it until 3 days before that she even was. We knew about 2 or 3 weeks before that something wasn't right. But we had not taken her to only a regular doctor, and he told me that some of her organs were enlarged, and that I should see a pediatrician, which in those days was not common unless it was necessary, you know. So the minute I walked into his office, he looked at her for about 5 minutes and looked her all over, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, she has an enlarged heart and she will not live." Devastating news. But anyway, we did survive, and it's been 8 years since she's been gone, and I'm closer to her now than in touching than ever before. She was our missionary. If it hadn't been for that situation, I don't know if we would have ever discovered the church. But because I searched and searched. Where was she? And a few other truthful things that I want to know. How come we don't have any prophets? How come there's so many different churches? Same question Joseph Smith asked. And why don't they all agree? And et cetera, et cetera. And what's the mission? When the missionaries called, Alex was about 14 or 15, somewhere up in that age, I think. And yeah, just about that age. Grandpa answered the phone, and it was perfect that he answered the phone and said, "Sure, come on over," because I probably would have said, like I had before, "No, we have our own religion. We don't, because I always thought polygamy." This isn't going on the live air. I hope they'll think I'm real prejudiced, and I'm not. But anyway, when they came, I was and gave us what we call the discussions. Sometimes people call them lessons, but they're really more discussions. And today it's very open. You ask the questions and they just give you the answers. They don't have a regular book they follow with all the proper questions and answers and so on. But anyway, I heard everything that I had. Oh, I forgot. 2 years in the Congregational Church, which is where we went. There's a moment of silent prayer when we were attending at that time. And that moment of silent prayer is when I prayed all the things that I needed to know about religion. And every single question I had was answered within 1 or 2 sittings. So I was ready. Grandpa wasn't quite ready. That's why I say it was good that he answered the phone, because I could always say, "You asked him over here." Oh yeah, that was another one of the questions that I had, or statements or whatever. That whatever church we decided, because we were looking for other churches to join, it's got to be something that he and I both agree on, and it'll be a family type thing. So, and you couldn't get a better family church than the Elliott's church. So, and there were prophets, and Joseph Smith's story was not consequence. Some people think a lot of things, oh, that's just a consequence. Not a consequence. Yeah. Is that the word?
Coincidence.
Coincidence there.
Yep.
That goes with being 80. It's not a coincidence. It's just proof that God exists. We have a lot of that. And I have some wonderful stories which I won't share on here. I'll share them on paper.
I asked Grandpa yesterday after he talked about your conversion story if he would bear his testimony, and I was wondering if you would do the same thing.
I certainly will. And I'll start right out by saying, I know the church is true. I've been reading a new book lately called Believing Christ. Many, many people say, I believe in Christ, or I believe in Jesus Christ. But do you believe Him? So that's the topic of the book. It just explains so many things that we need to do to show our belief, which we're told from various talks, magazine articles that we have how to do that. A lot of us thank goodness for repentance, atonement, and many other such things. But I know the church is true. I have had so many spiritual experiences which are, to me, just awesome. That's one of the new words that we have. Fabulous, fantastic. And you need to learn how to recognize those things. Once you do, you won't miss it. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess, what are some of your fond or favorite memories of when the kids were growing up and when your children were little?
Well, the birth of all of them is always favorite. Just wanted to have 6 children. It just so happened I didn't have 6 children. I wanted 1 boy, twin boys, and triplet girls. Didn't have that. That's okay. I wanted 6. So I always wanted a good-sized family. And never once did you hear me say at the end of any vacation after the summer, oh, I can't wait till they get back to school, because that wasn't how I felt. We were a very active family with our children. We camped, we did things, all the organized games and scouts that they were in. Usually both of us were, and the rest of the family were at each of these functions. Occasionally we had to split. He'd go to one and I'd go to another. And only once were we not able to make one, and I don't even remember which child it was that we couldn't get to, but I do know that just one. And so we hoped we were doing things right. I'm sure we did many things wrong. But either way you look at it, when kids get to a certain point with whatever they have learned or not learned, they're each are individuals. We may shape some of their lives, but we don't shape it all. I think it was Hillary who said it takes a village to raise a family. And even though I'm not a Hillary fan, I'm not against her either, but that was a wise statement, because everybody they meet influences their life. And you always hope it's for the good. Unfortunately, they do meet up with other people. And so now we've leaned on prayer for many, many years. We are sealed to our children, which anybody who knows what that means is that they're ours. When we are in the hereafter, they're sealed to us. So even though they may not be keeping up their end of the bargain, they're still sealed to me. And in one way or another, Heavenly Father, thank goodness, will work things out. He's got a big job. Thank goodness for the millennium. We hear you.
So what do you think your philosophy was as a mom? What do you think your outlook was on it?
Well, not to have to yell too much. I know I probably did some, but in those days we believed in spanking, and my children did get spanked. And one time I spanked one of them longer than I wanted to, because I had all 6 and was probably frustrated over something. And whether the memories are with that child this day, I don't know, but I vowed after I finished, never again, and I never spanked anyone. Brings tears to it. But it wasn't a beating.
Yeah.
Just a spanking. But
A lesson learned.
yeah, by me.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
And what, I guess, would have been some of your favorite memories of grandchildren, or
Every time we had a new grandchild, we were excited. And I say every time because it's easy to say, oh, my first grandchild. And then the second one comes along, and the third. And of course, I've got 17 at this point. And I'm just as excited at the 17 as I am at the first. Because I like to be fair, for one thing. How can I love one more than another? And how can I love one of my children and say, well, the first one counts and these don't? So I guess I'm a very, very fair person. And that's part of my philosophy, too. I definitely believe in do unto others as you have others do unto you. And I've just lived that kind of a life.
and then great-grandchildren?
And I hope it shows. Yes, I have great-grandchildren. I'm just excited over them. I've got 17 to 2 more on the way. Unbelievable. Many that we weren't sure would ever take that big step.
So what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I guess that I was a good person, a loving person, a fair person, giving person. They certainly know that I remember their birthdays, even though I've got 3 new ones that I've got to start getting on the list. The gifts aren't big, but the cards are fun, and I'm known as what am I known as?
Confetti.
Yeah, but the stickers. I'm the sticker grandmother, because I put stickers in their cards. And I know one other side of the family is there's a grandmother that's known as the curly-haired Grammie. So, anyway, and as you can tell by all the reunions that we've had, that we really like to get together with our families and just love to watch the interaction. Used to take more of an active part myself, and this time I turned it over to others, and they've done a fabulous, fabulous job. So, in fact, they're still carrying things in. Look at the stuff coming in chairs.
Do you have a favorite book?
Oh, probably not, other than the scriptures.
They count.
I've never been a big reader because I never could fit a lot of it in. And I never wanted to read novels that weren't quite up to my standard. I have read some, of course, but they just weren't anything that I would read day after day after day after day after day.
Favorite movie?
Anything that would make me cry. Love stories and a love message in a bottle. And that comes to mind only because I remember the name of it. I've never been one to remember names of a lot of things like that. It's just not been my goal. I would not do well in those games where you have to,
All the trivia questions.
Now, Grandpa, he's a quiz, but he remembers those things. But he doesn't remember when I just told him to take out the trash.
Do you have a favorite scripture?
My favorite scriptures are those in the Bible that tell about the Book of Mormon. I cannot tell you what they are because I don't memorize that. But Ezekiel has quite a few. But there are so many in there that tell about the Book of Mormon. And until you get that spirit, you read right over that and not recognize it. And now I can go through the Bible and get so much more meaning out of it because I can see what it's saying. And it's just so exciting. And that's because of the Book of Mormon, the church being restored, the Holy Ghost. I mean, I just have such a big testimony of it. And I try to pass it on to my kids and grandkids with love. Nobody's forced. They can all think for themselves. That's because we believe in free agency. So. And I'm free.
Let's see. What's your favorite color? We can do some fun ones.
Well, my favorite colors are the good old red and yellow. I'm a winter person. I had my colors done as to what I should wear. I do not have that on right now, but I will at my party. A winter person is supposed to wear real bright colors. And I've worn red all my life. And my sister Mary always wore blue because she had blue eyes. So I grew up thinking I couldn't wear blue. But now I know I can wear blue. And it looks very good on me. I've never worn much green. But I've worn beige and orange when I had brown hair. And that was okay. But it does not look good on me. It's a fall color. And it just... But I did for years wear it. But I guess you'd have to say red and yellow second or vice versa. I'm very attracted to. And I always get compliments when I wear any of those bright colors. So.
Let's talk about your talents. You are a very talented lady. Painting and singing and all sorts of other things. Where did you learn and how did you pick it up? And
well, I used to sing in the choir when I was a young girl. Probably 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 in that era when I was still at home in the Methodist church, and Martha Twist was the organist, and she was a large lady, and she had a beautiful voice. Of course, at the time, I didn't know as I appreciated it, but there were very few of us in the choir, and I did have a good, clear soprano voice. In fact, I was told in my younger years that I had perfect pitch by more than one person. I do not have perfect pitch anymore. I can't even sing half the notes anymore. I wish I had done more with my voice. Michael-Anne had a good voice until she had her tonsils out. We were hoping that she would do something with it. Kaylee has a beautiful voice and has sung in plays and various things. But I think she's leaning in other directions, so probably she'll regret, just like me, that she didn't do a lot with it. And Pam had a good voice. I'm not saying the others didn't, but they weren't of that same thing. Pam has sung in her choirs at church, too. And I used to sing a lot of solos, but scared, oh my goodness, nervous. So as I got older, I did less and less. And I would sing duets. I sang at Bill's wedding with a man. We sang a duet. And I remember after the one part of it, which was really high, I wasn't sure if I was going to get it or not. And Alex was sitting in the congregation watching the ceremony, of course. And she said to me after, I almost thought you was going to lose it, Mom. I said, me too.
But you didn't.
No, and I've sung in the Messiah the last, well, out of 4 years that we've been in Arizona, I've sung 3 years. 1 year I wasn't able to because I was having some dizzy situations. And I probably won't sing again because of my neuropathy on my feet and my dizzy head.
And then painting.
Well, I learned to paint, which is called folk art or toll painting, when I was in Italy. There was an American there, several of them, of course, and she went to our church. And she was very talented at it, so she decided to have a class. So there were 5 or 6 of us that took her class. I cannot draw a straight line. I still cannot. I am not that type of an artist. I am a learned painter. And it's been so long since I've done it, I probably have to relearn. But I did one not too long ago. It comes right back. So if I can keep my hands steady, I can. But I would paint every day of the week if I had the opportunity. It's just one of those things, you get a lot of stuff out, put it away. We live in a small house. I do hope to do that. As most everybody knows, Afghans have been my thing. All of my kids have had a couple, and then my grandkids all had at least one. Some may have had 2 because they got pulling on it too hard or something. And then my great-grandchildren. I didn't think I'd be doing it. I said, they've all got grandmothers. Well, I've done it. So I got to go home and start 2 more when I find out the sex of these new. If they don't tell me, they may get a pink one and have a boy, or vice versa. Anyway, so I've made over 50, I know, as well as others that I've sold. Just a great big granny sweater, that's all it is, but very different colors. We know they are like
Nancy, you've traveled a lot with your husband and family.
Yes.
Any neat stories or favorite places that you stayed? Favorite countries that you visited or lived in?
Well, probably our favorite that we lived in was Japan. And that was my first airplane flight was from Maine to Japan. Of course, it wasn't all in one flight in those days. Actually, we drove across country and visited every state we could get in and see things. And we only had 3 of our children with us, Sharon, Bill, and Pam. And Alex already was married and had Derek, and Rick was off on his own. And we lived there for 5 years. I'm trying to think. We had a lot of Japanese friends. I taught English to, I had a class of 30 on base that worked for the U.S. government who were trying to get their English better. And so I actually went to Tokyo and bought translation books that anybody could use, and that's what they used and I used. And the most interesting, and then I had 4 dentists that came to my home, and they learned English. And young men, I think they were all married. One of them was having a child while I was, teaching him and so on, his wife. And the most interesting thing that they found that Americans did was a lot of them went to bed without a shower and showered in the morning. That was very foreign to them because they immediately went to the local town tub, whatever you want to call it, and had their bath. And secondly, of course, they went home to bed. Some of them had tubs in their home, but most of their homes were very small and they didn't. So that was interesting to them and quite shocking. Then another thing was I taught them how to make change, which even today our own kids don't know how to do that, how to count that. I was magic because they used an abacus, which to me was magic. And I did learn how to use that abacus, but I couldn't tell you today how to do it. But they just couldn't believe that I could count back to them. And they finally understood what that was all about. They probably never used it in their practice, but anyway, so that was an interesting part. I also taught American cooking, and Grandpa thinks that's a riot because I taught how to make spaghetti and lasagna. American? That's not American, that's Italian. I said, well, it's American to me. And I taught them how to roast the chicken by using the turkey. We had a real Thanksgiving dinner. And they made pies. And they don't have big ovens. They probably are getting there at this point. But in those days, they really didn't. But I still hear from 2 or 3 of the families. Some of them have passed away. And others have just, stopped. Because some of them have to get the interpretation before they can write me a letter, and then they have to have mine interpreted. But most of the ones that I'm writing to now do write English, and it's extremely interesting the way they word many of their things. A typical Japanese translation, But anyway, she said, I cooked the chicken like you taught me the other day. And I thought that was so nice, But, so they still do some of the
Let's see, and then your husband had interesting jobs and different things. Was that difficult having him? Was he gone a lot?
Sometimes it was, but other times it wasn't. I mean, you can't help but miss people when they're gone. But seeing that I was not the clinging wife, I made out fine. There were times that things didn't go as smooth as we, and etc. But the majority of the time they did. And the kids had good Japanese friends as well as American friends. We lived probably 10 miles off base, maybe 7. We never lived on the base, we lived on the economy. And we were fortunate. We had this huge 10-room house in Japan, and then when we lived in Italy, it was almost as big. And that was marble floors and marble this and marble that, 3 stories high, and we had a gardener who had, he called it a garden, ensalada garden, which is a salad garden, with lettuce and all that type of thing. We trimmed all our trees. So we had dogs in both places, and cats. And when we left, we gave them away to other people. And And in Italy, I drove. In Japan, I did not. In Japan, you drive on the left, and I said, no, the buses and the trains are so easy to get to. Within 5 minutes of my house, I had no problem. And when we went grocery shopping, me and this other girl that lived close to me, we'd go together on the bus and the train, come back in a taxi with all of our groceries. So that was fun.
Let's see, and then you guys went on a mission. You want to talk a little bit about that?
And we went to Detroit. We went on a mission when we lived in the lake. We had lived there very long. We were going to the Peterborough branch. And we let it be known to the branch president that if it came up, that we would be, available to go on a mission. And it took a while, which is fine. And actually, it was the second bishop, branch president, that came in that actually got the paperwork going and so on. And so we were called to Detroit, and they knew that we were ready to come, and they said, how about next week? And we said, well, we're ready, but not quite that ready. So I think we had 2 or 3 weeks to wind down all the business things you have to tend to. And then we drove with a car packed from top to bottom. We got there, and then we flew from there to the mission home in Provo, Utah, and spent our 2 weeks of training. Or was it 1? I can't remember. I think the young missionaries have 2, and I think we only had 1. But things change every now and then depending on what you need and so on. Had a wonderful time there. It was just magnificent watching those hundreds of young men singing Call to Serve. Here I go again. All these things that touch me. But it was just the most touching experience. Because we were in the front, and we'd turn around and look at them, and just amazing, all in their black suits and ties, and dedicated to the Lord. Just fabulous. They may be young, but people think they don't know the answers. They do. They're on a mission, they're special. And I had 2 very special experiences on my mission, spiritual. And again, I'm not going to share them with you. The camera, I'll put them on paper. They're very sacred. And Grandpa had his own, I'm sure, whatever he mentioned.
But it was a neat experience.
Oh, yes. I would recommend it to anybody and everybody. And I wish that we had gone on a second and a third, but you do pay for your own, and you also have to exist, and etc. So, but there are many people who serve many. And we had help. People donated, and stuff, and that was very well accepted. Thank goodness. No, loved every minute. Majority of the people were either black or Hmong, and we loved them dearly. I never had a prejudiced bone in my body, and I still don't. It doesn't bother me at all. They're human beings, children of God.
Anything else, Grammie? Anything else that you can think of? Any other memories or special times or anything else that you can?
Not that comes to the top of my head. As we're saying things have come to me, as you can see. But Grandpa usually can go through a lot of things that I wouldn't even think about. So I did have happy childhood, happy high school years. Student counselor for 3 years. I was in high school. We only had 19 in the class. We still meet every year in Henniker. And I will hope some come tomorrow. And today's the day, isn't it? I hope some will come to our celebration today, but I don't know. The class is getting smaller and smaller with everybody getting older and older. And of course, a lot of them live in different areas too. We're a very close family. neither one of my sisters has those kind of situations. I don't think my brother does either. Okay, that's...
Well, what's your final words, final advice to your posterity?
Live healthy. Live long. Love much. I think these things have been said by other people. But it's a good way to go. Just be tolerant, and loving, and kind, and non-judgmental. That is, I've always, when things happen, your immediate thought is to judge why, and wait until you find out why, and then do your thinking, of which we humans don't always do. But I sure have tried to be very conscious of that type of thing in my life. And I hope it shows. That's the thing. You never know what somebody's picked up on. So...
All right. Thank you, Grammie.
Love you very much.
I love you.
Love all of my family, and what more can I say?
Thanks.
Thanks.
You did great.
Well,
No, really.
it'll probably embarrass me when I see it. But